Could handguns be outlawed in Oklahoma? It might surprise many to know that the Oklahoma Supreme Court says that indeed handguns could be banned in our state. Now, before you accuse me of over-sensationalizing an issue, let me explain the situation that we face in Oklahoma, and it's one that most gun owners are completely unaware of. Article 2, Section 26 of the Oklahoma Constitution, our state version of the Second Amendment, says the following: "The right of the citizen to keep and bear arms in defense of his home, person, or property, or in aid of the civil power where thereunto legally summoned, shall never be prohibited, but nothing herein contained shall prevent the legislature from regulating the carrying of weapons." Now, the first part of that sounds pretty good, but the second part of the sentence is evidence of the progressive influences on our state from its earliest days. In essence, our state constitution says we're going to recognize the right, but not as a right, merely as a privilege. We're going to recognize your right to bear arms, but only if you do it exactly as we deem proper. Add to this the progressive influence on our state's court system, and it gets even worse. The Oklahoma Supreme Court has said that our state constitution only protects the right to keep and bear arms to a weak degree because the right is subject to the weakest standard of judicial review. Under this standard, almost any restriction on gun rights will be upheld by the courts. This has led to flawed case law, and I want to point out just a couple of examples of that today. First, from 1908, Ex parte Thomas. In this case, the Oklahoma Supreme Court stated that the purpose of Article 2, Section 26 is to provide for the maintenance of an armed state militia, and as such, weapons used for self-defense, such as handguns, aren't even protected by it. Second, from 1929, Pierce v. State. In this case, a man was arrested for carrying a Colt revolver in his belt on his own land. The Court of Criminal Appeals upheld the conviction, and they asserted that a complete ban of pistols would be completely legal. They said the government, quote, has the power to not only prohibit the carrying of concealed or unconcealed pistols or revolvers, but also has the power to even prohibit the ownership or possession of such arms, unquote. Now, one might think that since these cases were from so long ago, they wouldn't have much impact on things today. Unfortunately, though, they continue to shape our laws and affect the courts even still today. In OSBI versus Warren from 1998, the Oklahoma Supreme Court reaffirmed both Thomas and Pierce. And in the process, the court solidified this notion that any law relating to Article 2, Section 26 would be subject to reasonable regulation, which again means that almost any restriction on gun rights will be upheld by the courts as long as it does not totally prohibit the exercise of the right to keep and bear arms. So you see the problem. This is why OK2A has worked for almost 6 years now on a proposal that addresses these issues. We propose amending the Oklahoma Constitution for 3 reasons. First, to clarify that the handguns and other common arms used for self-defense are protected. Second, to clarify that self-defense, including the carrying of weapons for self-defense, is protected. And third, to require the courts to use a higher standard of scrutiny than this weak, reasonable regulation police power standard they currently use. We believe an amendment to Article 2, Section 26 of the Oklahoma Constitution that addresses these 3 concerns is the only way to effectively deal with this problem. Now, I know some might wonder if this is really necessary. After all, doesn't the Second Amendment cover all of this? And besides, this is Oklahoma. The state Supreme Court may have said handguns could be outlawed here, but the legislature would never do that. Well, let me say today that this is indeed necessary. Colorado used to be just as red of a state as Oklahoma, but with an influx of West Coast liberals into Denver and Boulder who brought their anti-gun beliefs with them, Colorado gun owners have seen their rights trampled over recent years. Political winds could change very quickly, and that same thing could happen here, and if we do not deal with this situation now, we will find it impossible to fix then. If those political winds were to change direction here in Oklahoma and a magazine capacity limit law was implemented, for example, no federal court would ever overturn it. But with these 3 concerns just mentioned having been addressed in our state constitution, then our state constitution becomes a second layer of protection. This is why we must do something. In our next video, Restoring Gun Rights in Oklahoma, we will explain OK2A's proposed constitutional amendment and how it will restore gun rights in our state.